Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video I'm going to go over some of the basic tools that I found are the most common or the most essential, I guess you could say, for just maintaining your bike, or if you're going to install some new parts, or say you've got to purchase a new bike, it's in the box and you're going to assemble it. So kind of an array of tools here. And so a question I see asked a lot is, what kind of tools do I need from my home bike shop, or what kind of toolkit do I need, or what toolkit should I buy that's going to be a good deal for me to work on bikes? Or there's a lot of options for complete toolkits, Park Tool or Pedro's or Bike Hand, or I don't know, there's several others that you can buy on the internet that will definitely do the job. So the thing with the big toolkits is a lot of times you're going to end up with a lot of tools that you don't necessarily need. Just for example, different types of crank and bottom bracket interfaces. You may not need a crank puller if you've got a Hollowtech 2 or a BB30 bottom bracket, and kind of vice versa. You don't need all the specific Shimano Hollowtech 2 tool if you've got an older vintage bike and that's pretty much what you're into working on, or that kind of thing. So anyway, you can generally, I found you can assemble your own toolkit for your specific needs and generally end up with better quality tools for less money, actually. So I've worked in the bike industry for over 37 years, primarily as a bike mechanic. In the bike shop where I'm at now, where I'm working, we see it's a very high volume shop. We see a very wide range of bicycles on a daily basis. So just kind of compiled this little a basic essential tools list that, or if you're putting together a little tool set for your shop, it's a good starting point. That's going to cover probably 90+% of any bike maintenance or repair that you're going to do. Kind of one way I've always kind of collected tools for my home personal stuff, or whether for a bike or car or whatever, I'll kind of usually buy the tools for the job that I'm going to do, and then after that you have the tools to do it again if you need to or whatever. But I don't know, I feel like that's a better method than as opposed to just having a bunch of tools that you're not going to use all of them. You just have a lot of extra tools to store and things like that. So yeah, most of the tools that I'm going to have in this list are easy to acquire. Some are not bike brand specific. They're not Park Tools or Pedro's or whatever. They're just things like screwdrivers, stuff like that. You don't necessarily need a bike shop name brand to get a good tool there. So anyway, without further ado, let's just jump right into it, and we'll start out with this list. Alright, so probably the number one tool that I use at the shop or here at home or whatever on a frequent basis would be just a good old-fashioned, well, at our shop we have an air compressor, but here at home it's just a basic floor pump. Some people call it a track pump, but just something to maintain your air pressure. Probably the number one tool as far as bike maintenance is just some way to inflate the tires. Anyway, so the kind of the features to look for, or a gauge that's easy to see. I did a video a little while back on this dual head type valve, so it basically works with any Presta Schrader valve by tubes, valve stems. So yeah, that's going to be number one. Number two would be just a standard Hex Wrench Set. So this is a little Pedro's Hex Wrench, but you can get, as far as if you were to just get one, this would be a nice, there's several other brands. I'll put some, links or whatever to this type thing. But basically what you want to look for in these is, most of these, it's a 9-piece set, and it goes from a 1.5 millimeter up to a 10 millimeter hex keys, which is going to cover pretty much everything. You know, there's some sizes that are a little bigger. There's generally not anything that's smaller. That's a great tool. I kind of like these. This is the Park AWS 10, which it basically goes from a 1.5 up to a 6 millimeter, which is, these are super handy. You know, a lot of times at the shop, a lot of the sales guys just keep these in their pockets to, you know, if they're doing kind of a quick fit on a bike or something. You know, Harbor Freight, they've got like these little kit sets of, this one's got all of those tools plus a 8 millimeter. They have the thing, you can get this, the Torx Hex Key, or the Torx, like the star, what you call the star bit, which that's got pretty well wide range of everything you would find on a bike. The T25 is by far the most common, you know, disc brake rotors and stem bolts, things like that. But they had this one, it's metric, the Torx, and then the SAE standard. It was like $7 or something for those. So you know, as far as just something to throw in your toolbox and, you know, have them to work on stuff on the fly, that's a good option. You know, a lot of mechanics like these 3-way, the 4, 5, 6 millimeters. I mean, sometimes I've got these on my bench at the shop, and I'll use them occasionally. I don't know, I don't really care for these as much as like a P handle or just a standard hex. I don't know, these seem like they're, you know, if you're repetitively doing a lot of stuff, that kind of, I don't know, it's hard on the wrist after a while. Next thing on the list would be little tire lever tools, which I've got kind of just a variety of here. There's all different kinds. There's not any right or wrong one. It's just what you like using. Usually I'll use the Pedro's ones at the shop, but that's something, you know, you're going to use all the time. Basic bike maintenance. Tires are a high wear item that, or not a high wear item, but that's definitely something that, you know, most people, if they're replacing worn parts, that's definitely a part that wears out, or, you know, fixing flats or whatever. So, you know, these are, you know, you have them in your carry-on tool kit, but, you know, as far as any home shop or bike shop to the pro level at a big bike shop, they're going to have tire levers. Fourth thing would be a chain, like a little chain rivet tool or chain pin tool to push your pins out. This is an older Park version. It's the CT3. I think they've got a newer version of this that we have at the shop. It's got the little adjustable piece, so it works with pretty well any width of chain. And, you know, another thing, there, you know, it doesn't have to be the big size like this. You can use the smaller Park chain tools, but chain tools are one thing it's a little worthwhile to get something a little better. They do hold up better in the long run. Some of the cheap ones that are they can strip out, and then, you know, this one, the pin is actually replaceable, because over time those can get bent or they just wear out or break or whatever. So it's nice to be able to replace the part that wears out on these tools. And then kind of coinciding with the chain tool is the actual quick link tool. This is an older one too. It's the MLP. This is the MLP1. I think the MLP, I don't know if it's the one, this is the newer version, but it's got the pieces where you can set the pin in place. Usually I'll just use the bike, you know, the Torx version, and pop them in place right on the bike. But super handy tool there to have. Use those all the time to, you know, if we're doing a drivetrain clean, that kind of thing. Tools to remove your cassette. Most bikes these days have a cassette. A lot of bikes, you know, folks may, you know, still have a freewheel, which is a similar tool, but just here at home I've got my little, this is a Pedro's tool, and just a standard chain whip. This is an old vintage Suntour one that I've had for, I don't even know, 20 or 30 years. Personally, I like, you know, I don't usually use the chain whip as much as I use the Unior makes a good tool, and Pedro's, I have one at the shop that's a Pedro's, which typically I'll use that one, but it's got the 3 pins that just engage into an 11 tooth cog or a 12 tooth cog. you hold that and then you use your, I've got a Park cassette lock ring tool, and just in conjunction those together, that works really well. On a Freewheel tool, it's similar to this. You can use your this is 7/8 or this 15/16 for the Pedros. Most of the Park ones are 1 inch, so you can use a big wrench like that, or just an adjustable crescent wrench. These are probably the most versatile because it's you can use that on several different things. Yeah, the next thing would be just some either diagonal cutters or just cable cutters. So these are the Park ones here. This is an older Park one. This is just some of my home tools that, these are, if you're cutting cable housing, be it shift or brake, these work a lot better than, say, your diagonal cutters. Get a lot straighter cut with those. But most of the time at the shop, I've got some Husky diagonal cutters that we got from Lowe's or something, or Home Depot, that those work really well just for cutting the inner cables. I kind of actually like them better a lot of times because they tend to not, if it's a nice sharp tool, they tend to not fray out the cables and such. Depending on what kind of bottom bracket or crank interface you have on your bike, and getting the tools for that particular application. So like the Shimano Holotech style are probably the most common on bikes today. So I've got this, it's just on a ratchet, but I've got this Pedro's tool here. This one's actually metal. I use the 1/2 inch drive, or you can use your wrench there on the hex portion, that 15/16. Park has some really nice ones that we use a lot at the shop that are aluminum, so they're nice. They don't mar up the finish of the aluminum cups. They've got them for pretty much every size as far as Shimano, the smaller new Shimano Holotech, and then there's lots of others, like the FSA, the 386 Evo cups that thread in. It's a little bigger diameter. There's several others. We got some Chris King cups, different bottom brackets, T47s and stuff that are it's basically this similar version to this, but I really like using those. If you have like the Octalink or the square taper with the sealed cartridge bearing, you're going to have the splined interface that you'll use for that doesn't fit outside. The cups are inside the frame, so you use that type. If you've got a square taper, the old school, you'll need a crank puller. You'll need if it's got just the serviceable loose caged bearings in there, you'll need so I did a little video a while back where I overhauled or restored my old Racine record bike, so use all those tools and things in that particular video. So yeah, it's kind of just if you're working on a variety of bikes, it's good to have all those tools, and that's one thing. A lot of the toolkits will come with the parts for every type bottom bracket, but if you're just working on your personal bikes or your family's bikes, it may be a little narrower band of bottom brackets, so I wouldn't go and get a bunch of different tools that you're not necessarily going to need. Next would be just a good screwdriver set, Phillips flathead. I've got one at the shop that's a Linux. It's got 3 flatheads, 3 Phillips. I think a number 1, 2, and 3. But by far the most common is that probably of all of those would be the number 2 Phillips. So this is probably my favorite Phillips. This is the Shimano Vessel, so it's the JIS industrial standard. So it's cut a little different. I don't know if you can see, I've got a standard old Craftsman US made, and then I've got this JIS standard. So just the way the teeth are machined out, the 4-sided pieces there, these fit in Shimano derailleurs as far as if you're doing limit screw adjustments and things like that. That tool works way better in that situation. So another thing would be just a good set of hand tools. So some of them will have like a ratcheting end, you know, on the boxed end, and then your open end. So I really like these type. This is I think a gear wrench. You know, there's several other companies. You know, I've got these. There's some old Craftsman Professionals. So the long, I kind of like the long handled wrenches, but you know, anything from 7 millimeters up to, I don't know, 19 millimeters or so is a good investment. You know, you use them on all kinds of other things, you know, working on cars or whatever else, but you know, that's handy. I've got this little 3-way that's the Park makes one that's a newer version. I use that quite a bit at the shop on department store bikes or older bikes that have a lot of, you know, the fixing bolts on the derailleurs are going to be a nut instead of like a hex key, Allen key type is what you'll find on most of those these days. You know, so another thing kind of going along with the cable cutters and things, you know, that's one thing that we do a lot at the shop is replacing shifter brake cables. You know, and your basic tune-up shift cables, ideally, if you're riding a lot, should probably be replaced annually. But these little, especially this one, just the straight pick, you know, when you cut the cable, it's got that Teflon liner, and so, you know, if you stick that in there, it opens it up, it makes it super easy to fish your inner wires through the housings. But yeah, these are just some cheap Harbor Freight ones that I think these are, you can get the set of 4 for 99 cents. I use some Park ones at the shop that it's basically a set of, you know, kind of the curved, a straight 90 and then a straight pick. And those ones have a little magnet on the end, which are kind of nice, kind of a dual purpose tool. Sometimes they kind of get in the way because if you have a bunch of stuff laying on the bench, the little magnet picks up everything laying around. So yeah, and then I don't know, kind of the last thing, other than, well, 2 last things. So one would be just a basics, kind of a plier set, like some needle nose, maybe a channel lock. You know, sometimes I like some that are full size or some that are smaller, and I'll use those a lot for when I'm hooking cables up to a derailleur. You know, I usually don't use like a 4th hand tool. I'll just grab hold of the end of the cable and pull it. You know, if I'm adjusting something, one that's already cut and there's only an 1.5 inch cable sticking out, those little tools are nice to be able to pull it and, you know, get your cable tension set and then cinch it back down, cinch your anchor bolt back down. And then the last thing is just your spoke wrench tools. So my favorite ones to use are I've got this old DT spoke key, but the newer DTs are really nice. They're easy on the fingers. I've got a lot of the Park, the individual Park ones, which are decent. Probably the least, I don't know, I've got this one that's a 3-way Park, little hex, or it's a little spoke key it's deep, and so it works with the well, as far as the sizing on here, or it just says 0, 1, and 2 as far as I don't know what the actual size dimensions are on here, but it's basically the red, the green, and the black Park spoke wrenches all in this one. The ones I don't really recommend, or I see them a lot on videos, but are these kind. And sometimes I've had these around, and you get usually I'll use these on a spoke that's the nipple's really big. One of these, the number 12 or 13 or something on here. That's just, I don't have any other. But these have it over time. If you use them more than once or twice a year, these have a tendency to round out. There's just not that much material here to support the spoke nipple, so a lot of times these are not really worth it. You can save a couple bucks or so getting these as opposed to an individual actual nice quality spoke wrench. But as far as rounded out spoke nipples, it's just not really worth it. Then if you have a spoke that's bladed. This is an old Bontrager tool I've had forever, but probably my favorite one is the actual DT that fits down in with the, it's kind of an L shape and it sticks down and it goes into the actual DT spoke wrench. My favorite one, that I really like that setup because you can holds it really down low and you can turn the spoke nipple, and those work really well. I almost forgot about this tool, but the pedal wrench. So this is the kind of a mid-range. This is the Park PW3, the professional wrench. So they have kind of a home version that's a little thinner. Had one of the guys at the shop using one that was just a bike assembler, and he was able to kind of round that thing off in a week or so of using it steadily. But this one's probably, I don't know, 20 years old or so, and it's still in pretty good shape. But there's a current version of this one, and they have the professional one that's a little longer, and it's got the open points there a little bit angled, so I don't know, get a favorable angle with them. You know, these are 15 millimeters on that side, 9/16. You know, obviously most pedals these days are 15 millimeters. As far as the flats, this 9/16 rarely gets used, but I really like this version. It's got a grip that I put on there just for, that's kind of an extra accessory. But your pedal wrench, a lot of pedals these days also use a 8 millimeter hex key for the back side of it. I use the Park. There's a hex key with the handle on it that I use that one at the shop quite a bit, it's really nice. So yeah, a lot of pedals, they don't have the flats, they just have the 8 millimeter hex key on the back. Some use a 6 millimeter. And then one last thing is an actual repair stand. You know, there's lots of choices I see on bike forums and different things. People get them from, you know, $25 ones from Aldi, and that's probably better than nothing. I made a video a little while back showing what kind of features to look for if you're purchasing a bike stand, and then kind of some tips on how to use them as well. So yeah, if you're in the market for that, or just even want some tips on how to use a repair stand, that's so yeah, I'll put a link to that, the work stand video, as far as yeah. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. I've got plenty of other bike tutorials and other videos similar to this one. If you liked the video, please leave a comment, questions, either which way. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time.